4 simple rules for success. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the focus group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the focus group. Tim Bennett here, as always, with my good friend and co-host, Mr. John T. Nash. We can't believe it's just about, well, Christmas in a couple weeks, less than a couple weeks, and God, the year flew by fast, but thank you all for joining us here. Be sure to find out all about us at focusgroupradio.com. You'll also find our podcast there, which is TFG Unbuttoned. All of our media, like John likes to say, is housed at focusgroupradio.com. You'll also see our partner there, Deep Discount. Be sure to click on them and start shopping away for some last-minute gift ideas, but we'll talk about them a little later in the broadcast. So, Mr. Nash, do you have a lot of Christmas shopping to do this year?
We are all done.
All done?
Because all family members have ceased doing gifts. It's like food items or a get-together. I've already took care of the tips for the building, which I actually enjoy doing. I like giving our staff tips, and that's done. So now it's just sit back and relax and see some friends for dinner and coast into the holidays.
So even your nieces, you don't do the gifts? Everybody, because everyone's adults now.
We haven't done that in a long time. And when they were younger, like when they were kids, toys, the whole bit. But now that they're older, and my oldest niece Emma is getting married in May down in Texas. My youngest niece Catherine got married this past year, so they're doing good. So no, and that's something that I actually like about the holidays now that I've gotten this whole gift thing out of the way.
Right.
Obligation, that's off the table. Now I can concentrate on other things.
I have 4 great, I guess they're great nephews. That's what I would call them, little boys. And so it's been kind of fun, getting them little gifts for Christmas. But
that's the best
for little
part,
kids,
the toys, yeah.
Yeah. So, but
hey, so going back to, I think last week we did on the show, we talked about, it might have been Unbuttoned or the main show. I think it was Unbuttoned, where people were doing poppers during Wicked during all the songs. We heard from one of our listeners named Corey, a hilarious note. Corey is very funny, and he's like, "Look, guys, poppers have been around for a while, and we know that." And he talked about how back in the disco days, when the songs would last for like 10, 15, 20 minutes, you'd have the little bottles come out and people do poppers on the dance floor. But it reminded me of that trip I took with Trish one time Tony, a.k.a. Trish, down to South Beach. We were in that bar Twist, and we're hanging out, and some drag queen was in there, and, she either had been entertaining or whatever, but she was a little in her cups, and they were trying to escort her gently towards the front door, and she was getting a little rowdy, and then she takes this little brown bottle out, and right above her head was one of these air conditioning ducts and vents. And she opens the bottle and she tosses the fluid into the duct. She goes, "Poppers for everyone!" And suddenly the smell of poppers permeated the bar. And so that reminded me of that. And I just thought, how else could you have an experience like that? But back in the old days when you could go to South Beach, it was poppers for everyone.
Back in the old days. Now, I do remember where people would do the poppers on the dance floor. The first time I smelled it, I didn't really know what it was. But you're right. I guess maybe we shouldn't have been surprised about people sitting in Wicked, although I'm guessing they were
I don't know. I'm
age.
still surprised by doing it by yourself in a movie theater while you're watching a musical that was on Broadway that's now a movie. I mean, I could, you could fault me for some things, but not for laughing at that.
Wasn't that in the movie Airplane where the guy, wasn't it the pilot doing, or he was sniffing glue, I think.
Glue.
It's kind of the same thing.
We saw I'm so glad you brought up Airplane. Could it ever be made today?
No.
Remember when they bring the kid up to the cockpit and the captain's like, "Hey, you ever seen a grown man naked?" You remember all these crazy things that movie.
How about this brochure of famous Jewish sports heroes? You remember? I mean, it was everything.
Remember Talking Jive?
Yeah.
Like she would talk to she would talk jive to the black passengers. Yeah. That movie skewered everybody and everything. So I think that's how. And then there was that crazy guy that would walk back and forth in the control tower. Well, it's a bad week to give up glue. It's a bad week to give up drinking. A bad week to give up cigarettes as the plane's going out of control.
I know we talk. It's funny you mention this because I know we talk about Pluto, but I was flipping through and I found Archie Bunker, All in the Family.
All in the Family. Okay.
Which we always said they could never get away with it now. But you know what was interesting as I watched it, and some of the language was rough and it was stereotypical. I mean, they went after everybody, whether you're Polish or English or French or whatever. Archie was going off against Catholics and the Jews. But you know, what I thought about it was they were having a conversation about it, and it was in the open. And now it just seems like you can't talk about it. You can't say anything about it. I mean, Archie was the equal offender, right? But he usually learned his lesson at the end, whether he got it through Mike or he got it through Gloria or the neighbors or whoever, the Jeffersons. I mean, there was always kind of a moral to the end. About
to your point, Mr. Jefferson used to really go at him. I mean, and so you're right, Tim. I mean, it was an open dialogue. I mean, so it might have hurt a little bit, or it was like, ooh, but yeah.
Now, my favorite one with George Jefferson and Archie Bunker was they were arguing over who's number one. And so Archie says, well, I'm number one. And George Jefferson said, no, I'm number one. And they were both giving, I'm number one. And Archie was giving his white points and Jefferson was giving his black points. And they're fighting and fighting. And so Mike says, well, if one of you is number one and one of you is number two, who's number three? And they both say together, the Puerto Ricans. And then, of course, he goes to commercial. But it was, so they came to agreement. There was a détente. They came to an agreement on that. But it was just, it was
a different time. It was, and think about Hollywood Squares. There's a famous, there's a famous thing where Paul Lynde is asked something about, like, how would you know if you were just dropped down somewhere, if you were in
the
New
Planet
York
of the
City?
Apes? How did they know they were in New York City? Yeah,
the Puerto Rican. Just there was, and you would look at, sometimes I listen to the Comedy Channel on Sirius, and they often replay those famous roasts they used to do, like the Dean Martin roast or something. Man, it is free for all, and it's all done with good intention. But of course, now you look at it, and then this leads me to something that's funny. You brought this up about All in the Family, because we caught Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer on ABC over the weekend.
I did,
even though I have the disc and I could just pop it in. I do like watching it broadcast.
Too many commercials.
Yeah, way too many.
Yeah.
But it is cleaned up. And I always laugh when Bob and I, towards the end of Rudolph, you could see that the puppets have been really manipulated because there's dirt on the hands and stuff. Yep. We're watching, though, and there's the scene where Santa chastises Donner for, like, Rudolph's, how could you let him have a red nose? And Bob's like, whoa, Santa is really a nasty. I'm like, yeah. And
he's bullying.
Yeah, and Yukon Cornelius could have been like the
leather daddy.
The leather daddy. And I always love when he throws the pickaxe up and nothing. And the snow bumble's reformed. I mean, but Hermie the dentist. I mean, again, I know when it was made, and I know not to take offense at it, but that's me just saying what I said is a very critical thing. I know not to take offense at it because I know its origin. It wasn't intended to be, savior of the world.
But it was certainly about conformity and, being the same and not being different. And
in Rudolph's case, he was only accepted and loved when he was useful. Like, oh, okay, we could use your red nose for something.
Oh, he cuts hair. Oh, he's a florist. Oh, he's a dentist.
Exactly.
It's useful.
Now, totally non sequitur, totally unrelated. I think 1 or 2 weeks ago, I brought up this thing called the Death app or the Death Clock app or something.
Yeah, I tried to do it, but it made me want to pay.
You could skip that. You have to cleverly go up and click a little X in the upper right. Well, our listener, Billy, did it. And he sent me this funny note where Billy's like, whoa, Nash. He said, this was grim. He came up with 84.
Okay. That's about right.
And he said, unless something happens where his partner pushes him down the stairs or something like that. Like that could.
What was your number? You were 87.
87. No, I did it 3 times. I got 87. I got 89, and I got 89 as third time. So, according to
what do you think changed? Did you answer something different to get the 87, or you don't know?
I ignored the alcohol question. So they ask you this question, like, how many drinks do you have a week? The minimum you could possibly put in there is 5 to 7. And I have maybe
odd.
2.
You couldn't have put 0 or something?
I just said none.
Yeah.
It still said I was going to have a liver problem later on, so I don't know.
Really?
Well, you know what it does? I bet this thing somehow hooks into the actuarial tables that people use, the insurance companies and stuff, to figure stuff out. It probably just looks at your age, your ethnicity,
Do you
and
smoke?
a few other things. Yeah, and says, okay, well, the average age for a male is like, I think you and I talked about this on a previous show. I'm at 90 or something. Like I'm
Because
supposed to
then
make
it asked you about your grandparents, I think,
Yes, it
how
did.
long they lived, and that probably is also part of the actuarial. So if your grandparent lived to 80, you add another 5 years or whatever the number would be.
Yeah.
That's what I figure they were probably doing as well. But I wouldn't want to know. I don't know. I don't want to know when I'm going to die. Do you?
No.
I don't have any interest in knowing.
Tim, here's the thing. You know you're going to. I just don't want to know when.
Yeah. Because
I
then,
mean,
then
it's-
all you would do is live toward it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've always said, you'll know if I get some terminal illness, John, you're going to know because I'm going to drain my accounts. And I'm going to buy a big either fire engine or I'm going to buy a snowplow, huge dump truck loaded with sand. I'm just going to hit. Anytime anyone pulls out in front of me or is going too slow, I'm going to hit them. Boom. So you'll know when you see me showing up with a big old diesel Mack truck with this big plow on it and sand in the back. Watch out. He's only got about 2 weeks left.
Yeah. So your plan is if you knew ahead of time when the end date, when the checkout date was,
going to take care of all the bad drivers on the road.
You're going to school them. You're going to do what Bob is. You're going to school them.
School them. If I see somebody texting when they're I'm going to turn right into them. Boom.
Now, I'd like to just point out that this is not the way Tim drives. If you're in the car with Tim, you can hear him an expletive-laced rant about somebody, but he is the most professional, calm, and safe driver. A lot of stuff happens behind the wheel, like, but it doesn't translate to you doing anything bad with the car.
No,
that's why I
can't
think
use it as a weapon.
No,
But,
that's
but
why
I will
think
use
your
the Mack truck as a weapon.
That's why I think it's such a brilliant idea. It's so not you to get that big car and.
Or I saw an old fire truck when I was going up to Philadelphia last week. There was a fire truck for sale on the way up. And not a lot of money. And I thought, I can get one of those and just get around. I mean, who's not going to pull over if you got your lights on and siren? It doesn't matter if it's a spring. And you just put Springfield on the door, right?
Springfield, yeah.
And just drive all around with a fire truck.
You get a cyber truck and do a lot of damage with that. Although I have a feeling that thing would fall apart like a little matchbox after a while. Maybe I'm wrong.
My uncle, I got this idea from my uncle back in the 50s and 60s. They had a friend who had an old fire truck, and that's how they went out to the bars and stuff. And they would just all get in the fire truck, and you just leave it out front with the light on. No one's going to do anything in the fire truck. Mm-hmm. It's a great way to get around.
That or an old ambulance, yeah.
Yeah, don't you think?
I like it, yeah.
So anyway, Mr. Nash, what caught your eye this week?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
The headline for me, and this particular caught my eye, sort of says it all, but I'll give you the granular detail behind it. A woman on The Price is Right who was wheelchair bound.
I can't believe you picked this.
Did you see it?
Matt sent me this.
Okay. Her name is Danielle. Super nice. She happens to be a comedian as well, but she won a treadmill and a sauna. Okay, and she's in a wheelchair, right? So, it says here that not everybody walks away happy when they win something on The Price is Right. For instance, winning a sauna and a treadmill didn't make Danielle Perez happy since the participant on the show was wheelchair bound. So this is after Drew Carey, the host, asked the show's announcer to reveal the prizes. George appeared to rush through the part when he unveiled the treadmill and focused more on the sauna, as heard in the video. Later, many took to social media and pointed out just how awkward this scene was. This poor woman in a wheelchair just won a treadmill on The Price is Right. So for the first time ever, I saw a woman in a wheelchair make it on The Price is Right. Her prize was a treadmill. God is very cruel. Someone who was Danielle's friend took to the site and wrote, "My BFF, Diva Deluxe, won a treadmill on The Price is Right. She's in a wheelchair. LOL. At least we know now that nothing is fixed." In other words, if she could win however, the best reaction came from Danielle Perez herself, the winner, who is wheelchair bound. She said, "When you win a treadmill on national TV, but you have no feet." So she's a comedian. She's been in a wheelchair since 2004 after losing both her legs in a bad accident. She said, "I kept thinking it was a really bad joke," she says laughingly, but there was no irony in the cheers or applause, she told CNN, despite a collective and awkward silence among the audience. Like, "Oh, you won a treadmill." No one said, "You're cheap, cheap, cheap," which according to her was later edited out of the show. Danielle said, "Everyone at CBS seemed genuinely excited for me that I won." So that's my thing. So she took it well. I don't know what she's going to do with these prizes, but again, in the spirit of the game show, she won some of the big prizes. Right now,
Yeah, well, and when she got up on stage, they said, "Oh, you finally made it." I guess she was in contestants row for a while, and I'm just laughing at the absurdity of it because I thought to myself, they know what these prizes are, right? There's a run of the show, and when you had a contestant in a wheelchair, I would have thought they might have
swap it
said,
out.
"Listen, if she gets called, just switch one of the games, right? Or switch one of the prizes for when she comes up on stage." Because I've never seen them. Rarely have I seen them give away a treadmill. And when this came on,
You're so right.
And somebody sent me this, and I thought, how did the announcer, how did Drew, how did they get through this? Because it really is absurd. It'd be like giving a blind person a car, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, you want a car. Oh, okay. So, but she did handle it well. And I'm laughing just because the absurdity of it, because I thought when they were taping this, and you have a contestant that is in a wheelchair in contestant's row, you might want to consider swapping out the treadmill for, I'm sure they've got something else back there.
Yeah.
So, but that's, I can't believe you found that one because it's also been all over social media too. They've been playing it.
Oh, really? Oh, see, I found it on CNN about 5 days ago, 4 or 5 days ago, and my mouth just dropped open because I thought exactly what you thought, Tim. There's a way to correct for this problem while the show is being recorded. But in the spirit of the game, like the way she said with no irony, everybody's like, "Oh my God, you won!" Like they're happy, but
And I think with these prizes, somebody told me once, it was on one of these shows, you can get a cash value.
Yes, you can.
I think because you have to pay taxes on these prizes. Mm-hmm. So when somebody wins $100,000 or something on these things, it's a lot of tax.
Yeah,
that's why it's tough to give cars away. Well,
you and I know that, right? You just can't be any different. I bet.
Mine can't be any more different. Although we've talked about OnlyFans before and the popularity of OnlyFans, and this one popped up to me because it said, "Mom's secret OnlyFans cash guarantees her kids are going to have their best Christmas yet." So this is a woman in Sydney, Australia, and she said that the family just always made ends meet paycheck to paycheck, and they've always had some sort of issues with finances and bills and credit. And so she had heard about this OnlyFans. She didn't know much about it, but she decided she was going to open an OnlyFans account and told her husband and a couple of close friends that's it. She didn't tell anybody else. And her shtick was she wasn't going to show her face, which I think is actually pretty good. So while her X-rated work remained a secret to her children, she said her getting on OnlyFans last January, so a year ago, has really earned her enough money that she's had a whole new outlook on life. She says she's made lots of friends. She feels that she's worthy, whatever that means in quotes. And people appreciate her and they don't judge her on OnlyFans. And her husband loves the idea of it. And some of it is self-love and some of it, I guess, they do things together, she and the husband. And they call this pocket money. She's been able to not only give the kids what she says is going to be a great Christmas, she's also been able to pay for swimming lessons. They're able to go on a trip. And they're also able to host the family for a Christmas lunch, which they've never been able to do because they could never afford the expense to invite the extended family in. So she says, "I feel very seen. I know some people might look down upon this, but for me it worked out. And I'm happy to be able to give my kids the Christmas they deserve." So do you know anyone who does an OnlyFans?
No.
Would you think? What would you have? Or did you know anyone who's ever been a sex worker? Or like, what would you think of if you found out one of your friends secretly? If you found out all of a sudden somebody says, "Oh, hey, look at this." Of course, you and I had that happen with somebody who used to work with us. But the right. But all of a sudden, if you
yes, Tim, I'm like, hello.
So if you see this, would you judge somebody differently if all of a sudden you found out that you had a friend that was doing this? And
no, the most that would come to mind is my curiosity about how you can do it in front of a camera, the comfort level, how strangers, and now that you're on the internet, like anybody in the world can see this. Like I wouldn't judge it, but I'm really curious about how the thought process goes and how you can even do it. Like, when you think about porn or even OnlyFans, if you're watching a couple do something, it's being filmed by a third person, right? So I'm always, unless the camera's on a tripod, but I'm always like, okay, that's just weird in general, right? Like, when was
Yeah.
the last time you fooled around with your partner and you had someone with a camera over your shoulder, right?
Well, I thought this one was interesting in that they showed they took some screenshots, and they didn't show her face. But I guess if there's certain kinks or certain fetishes people have, certain
Yeah.
body parts or whatever, you could probably get away with not having to show your face and probably do okay. You had the right equipment.
Yes, and yes. And Tim, wasn't there someone on Twitter that always popped up? I don't even know if he's there anymore. Was it Hung Skater or something like that was the name of the guy? You never
He
saw
never
his
showed
face.
his face. Yeah.
Never showed his face.
Didn't have to.
But he had like, what, 1 million, like 600,000 followers or some crazy thing like that, right?
Yeah, and yeah. I mean, I'm always curious about the amount of money they make. Even if you just did it, if somebody said to me, you could do it for 6 months and make,
And
$500,000, it's,
And
where's the
walk away.
where's the
Yeah.
camera? But
you bring up a great point, because the next thing I was going to say about all of this is, doesn't it get stale after a while? Like when we were on our Saturday broadcast on Sirius, our daytime counterparts, like a Frank DeCaro, for example, would say, feeding the beast every day, like finding the articles, talking on the radio for 2 or 3 hours every day is a real. So making content like this on a constant basis for your audience, like after a while, you've done it all. Like, let's put a Santa hat on. Maybe you're going to be an elf. I mean, how far can you take it, right?
today you're going to be the Amazon delivery guy. I'm going to be the lonely housewife.
You're the whirlpool repairman today. Yeah.
I think I told you when I was a district manager for Subaru, one of the general managers at one of the car dealerships in Milwaukee had run a phone sex line out of the dealership as well as selling cars. And he would tell me about it. He had a whole laundry list of what people would pick. And he said most of his calls would come in from, closeted religious priests and married men or whatever. But it's like, do you want to be the construction worker, the carpenter, the fireman, and he would go through the whole list, and I would laugh. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I got 3 calls I got to do this afternoon," and they would give him a credit card number, and then he would do these, phone chats, and off he went. So
there was a podcast we listened to about the 900 numbers.
yeah,
And I'm looking for the name of it now. I don't remember the name of it, but they interviewed all these people who used to sit behind the phones. Sometimes they would sit there and knit while they were talking to these people.
Well, this guy was sitting in a car dealership in the closed office with his suit on, and he would do this 20-minute thing, and God only knows, nobody else knew he was doing it, but he made good money. He was making, I think it was over $300 a call, so he was doing over $1,000 a day. In between, selling a legacy.
Yeah, so I found the name of the podcast, by the way, for anybody who wants to listen, it's called Operator. And our friends Alex and Tyler recommended it to us. We were blown away because the money behind it was so crazy.
Oh yeah,
they made a lot of money doing this, and they talked about who they had to interview to do the phone lines, the whole bit. And then, of course, they talked about what people called in with, right?
Yeah.
Like what you were saying. So I'm still going back to this thing about one of your dealers ran a phone sex
Oh yeah,
line.
right out of his office. It was hilarious, and he was trying to get me to do it. He's like, "Oh, you'd make good money." He goes, "You can do voices." He said, because it's real simple. He goes, "You just, you give them, you sign up here, they call in, you take their credit card." And he goes, and if they want to go a little more, you know how to string them along.
The power of imagination.
The longer they stay on, the more money they have to pay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so, yeah. But I wonder if he still's doing it.
Not as popular. Now it's been replaced. But you could go on Twitter and you could scroll and
get
find
it all
all
for
this free crap. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, and that and that segue, Mr. Nash. As many people know, Deep Discount's been a friend of ours here and a partner of ours for quite some time here on the Focus Group. And you can own your passion by going to focusgroupradio.com and clicking on the Deep Discount logo and start shopping away. There's some great last-minute gift ideas. There's tens of thousands of items on sale, movies, music, games, toys, and more. And John and I always seem to find something to share with you each week. So, Mr. Nash, what was your pick this week?
Well, if you're watching YouTube, the landing page that I got when I went to Deep Discount just the other day featured Star Trek and Steelbook. Steelbook's a special edition kind of thing, and it's the original series. And if you don't have the original series, they remastered the special effects. They cleaned it up. It looks terrific. I still love the damn thing. You know, Bob thinks I'm crazy. A Star Trek episode will start within 5 seconds. I'll tell him what the name of the show is. He just looks at me and goes, "You're like an idiot savant." I'm like, perhaps just the idiot, not the savant part. But I'm recommending this. I do this every year for everybody. It's one of my favorite movies that Bob introduced me to years ago. It's called The Bishop's Wife. It was released in 1947. It stars Cary Grant as the suave angel Dudley, who is sent to Earth to help David Niven, who plays a bishop. He wants to have a cathedral built, but Dudley's there to kind of stir up the pot, so to speak. It's got some great actors. So it's Cary Grant, Loretta Young, David Niven, Monty Woolley, James Gleason, Gladys Cooper. And a lot of these people have, the minute you see the cast on screen, you're like, oh, I've seen these on the movies. But it's a charming, charming film. It's available from Deep Discount for $15.38 DVD. It's one of their manufactured on demands. I just love it, and I save this for about this time of year. We'll pop it in and watch the DVD, and I could watch it beginning to end. It's a charming film, so I recommend The Bishop's Wife.
I want to try to watch that this year. You had recommended that to me one time before, and I saw it pop up somewhere, but I didn't.
It may be on one of the streamers. I'm not sure.
Yeah, mine I picked. I was going through and looking at the last minute gift ideas, and this had popped up, and it caught my eye. It was the Frank Capra at Columbia collection. And it's a box set, and it's with Blu-ray 4K mastering. And it's got 27 discs.
Jeez.
And you can get it for $144.99. So if you're a fan, it's wonderful. And you essentially are celebrating 100 years of Columbia Pictures with this filmmaker. And
iconic.
Right, and he was one of America's most influential directors during the 30s. Particularly, he won 3 Academy Awards for Best Picture or for Best Director, and also 3 other Oscars in 9 different categories. And so you can get the whole collection here. And often, I think at holiday time, for people when you're trying to find stuff that you're not just going to be able to either buy at a store or see on streaming or in one of the other pay-per-view areas, you can have the whole collection here. So it's the Frank Capra at Columbia collection.
And we do have a new release, and that release is one that I don't know if I'm going to watch or not. Here's the name of the movie itself says the Terrifier 3 on 4K Ultra HD. It actually comes out next week, but you can pre-order it now. So here's the description, Tim, and right in the first sentence, I'm like, oh boy. After surviving Art the Clown's Halloween massacre. Okay, We've set the stage. Art is a clown, and clowns are sometimes, I'm not a big clown fan. Sienna and her brother are struggling to rebuild their shattered lives. As the holiday season approaches, they try to embrace the Christmas spirit and leave the horrors of the past behind. But just when they think they're safe, Art the Clown returns, determined to turn their holiday cheer into a new nightmare. The festive season quickly unravels as Art unleashes his twisted brand of terror, proving that no holiday is safe. So Art the Clown moves into the Christmas world with Terrifier 3.
See, I'm such a baby with these sort of movies. Richard loves a horror flick, and my neighbor Joyce across the street, with her, it's the gorier the better. I can't. If I see blood or whatever, I'm
out.
Screaming.
But Tim, you bring up something interesting. Because I know a lot of people who love horror films. They love a lot of genres, and they love them because they know it's not real, and they're entertained by it. You know, I look at it and like, oh boy, you know.
And I always try to say that, and I always try to put that in my head that I know I'm watching something, and there's a huge, there's 50 people behind them with cameras and production and whatever.
Yeah.
But I'm like a schoolgirl, screaming. So.
All right. So, again, folks, you can get the Deep Discount by going to focusgroupradio.com and clicking on the Deep Discount logo and start your shopping experience. It is the time of year when it's the last-minute gifts. There's tens of thousands of items on sale at Deep Discount, not just movies and TV shows. I picked The Bishop's Wife. It's a movie starring Cary Grant, Loretta Young, and David Niven. Quick Cary Grant story for you. urban legend has it that he was at the Beverly Hilton Hotel talking to Michael Caine after Michael Caine came out with the movie Alfie. And a woman comes up and recognized Michael Caine and said, "Oh, you're Michael Caine." She goes, "You never see," and he's standing right next to Cary Grant. She says, "You never see Hollywood stars anymore in Hollywood." And Cary Grant goes, "No, you don't." All right, sorry for the sidecar. Tim picked the Frank Capra at Columbia collection. It's 170 minutes, some of the best movies that came out of Columbia, because Frank Capra is one of the most iconic, inventive directors of the American cinema, well known. And the release this week is Terrifier 3. Involves a clown coming from Halloween into Christmas. They're kind of close, folks. So, again, we want to thank Deep Discount for being a partner of ours here on the Focus Group. We are going to take a very quick break. When we return, we have a business birthday and a shop talk, so we'll see you on the other side.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Now back to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Available pretty much everywhere.
Nothing says Christmas like Terrifier 3. John, I'm going to get you that.
No, you don't.
Clown into Christmas. So we have Halloween into Christmas. So, hey, without further ado, we've got our business birthday today.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
So happy birthday to Tony Hsieh. It's actually spelled Hsieh, but it's pronounced Hsieh, according to the pronunciation that I went to on the internet's, John, the Google. He was actually born December 12th, so this Thursday, December 12th, 1973. He was born in Urbana, Illinois. He died tragically at age 46 in Bridgeport, Connecticut. He was an American internet entrepreneur and venture capitalist. He retired as the CEO of the online shoe and clothing company Zappos in August 2020 after 21 years. Prior to that, he had co-founded the internet advertising network Link Exchange. Oh. I was not all that familiar with Link Exchange. Were you? You were
precursor
in the agency.
Yeah, precursor to some of the bigger ad networks. Yeah.
Yeah. So as I say, he's they have him as a Taiwanese American born in Illinois. He had gone to school he'd gone to Harvard for a degree in computer science in 1995. While he was there, he managed something called Quincy House Grill, where he would sell pizza to the students in the dorms. And his best customer was somebody named Alfred Lin, who would later become Zappos' chief financial officer and COO. After college, he went to work for Oracle. And after 5 months, he left, and that's when he founded Link Exchange, this advertising network, in 1996. And the idea was that he had done it with two college classmates, but the idea was that it allowed you to advertise on other members' sites in exchange for placing Link Exchange banner advertisements on their own sites. I didn't quite know how it worked, but were you familiar with it, John, as I asked you earlier? So, but in only 2 years, so the site grew. Within 90 days, Link Exchange had over 20,000 participating web pages, and the banner ads would display over 10 million times. So by 1998, he had over 400,000 members, and there were 5 million ads that would rotate daily. So as I said, he started this in 1996. In 1998, Microsoft offered him $265 million for the site.
He said, "No, I want."
So he
like
sold
$1.
it smartly, right?
Yeah.
He sold it, and after he sold to Microsoft, he went and he founded something called Venture Frogs, which was an incubator, right? An incubator and investment firm, and with his business partner. And the name came from a friend dared him and said, "I dare you to name your firm Venture Frogs." I don't know why. She decided to do that. And he did it, and they gave all the money. She said she would give him all the money that she had to invest into it. And they invested in a number of tech startups, including Ask Jeeves, Open Table, and Zappos. He seems to just keep falling into it. So this guy from the pizza days at Harvard ends up giving him the idea of selling shoes online in 1999. He initially wasn't too interested till he found out that the shoe business was a $40 billion market a year.
Huge. Yeah.
And so he joined Zappos as a CEO, and at the time when he took over, they only had about $1.6 million of total sales in 2000. By 2009, they reached over $1 billion in sales. And they said the reason he always wanted to make customers feel happy or feel comfortable with shopping. And he had this kind of happiness idea around his head all the time. And so he decided to create a holacracy, which is the company had no job titles. So if you worked at Zappos, nobody had a job title because he felt everybody should be able to self-organize. I think that's kind of difficult. Gore-Tex did that for a while, where no one had titles. And I think sometimes you need to have a boss, don't you?
I do, and I like the way you said Gore-Tex did that for a while. That implies that it did not pan out.
Because eventually somebody's an expert in tech design, somebody's an expert in
customer
IT.
service,
right.
fulfillment,
Right. So they also said at Zappos they hired only about 1% of all the applicants.
Wow.
Which is a pretty tough gig to get. He loved the game of poker, and so that's why Zappos was moved to Las Vegas.
Not just Las Vegas, Tim. He reinvented downtown. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so they said the headquarters was initially in Henderson, Nevada, but because he loved the game of poker, he decided to move to downtown Vegas. He had property there. He also had he spent $56 million on property in Utah as well.
Jeez.
But they said, when he left Zappos in 2009, he left because Amazon announced the acquisition. So they bought Zappos for $1.2 billion. The guy just falls in it, doesn't he? So he made himself $214 million from the sale, and not including the money from the initial investment from Venture Frogs. They said he joined a couple of other sort of
boards.
startups with and boards and so forth. But they said that the one thing right before his death, they said that he had some very odd habits, and he was known for taking extreme challenges regarding his body. So he would starve himself of oxygen to induce hypoxia and by using nitrous oxide. He would fast to the point where he was under 100 pounds.
Jeez.
And he would go on these extreme fasting binges. And so the singer Jewel, she said she was aware of Hsieh's extreme drug use. He also was a heavy drug user at times. And so she sent him a letter telling him and warning him that this was not going to turn out, well, and warned him of death. On the morning of November 18th, 2020, he was injured in a house fire in New London, Connecticut. And his identity wasn't revealed at the time. It was reported he was visiting family for Thanksgiving, and he became trapped in a pool shed during a fire. But they're not sure whether he barricaded himself in there or not for the thrill of it. They said the exact cause of the fire was still under investigation. I forgot, this was 4 years ago. He was rescued by firefighters and transferred to a burn unit in Bridgeport, Connecticut, to undergo treatment for the burns and smoke inhalation, but he died on the 27th of November at age 46. And the medical examiner determined that it was smoke inhalation, and they said it was an accidental death, but people wonder
the way
the role might have been.
When you sent this over and I did a little R&D, you outlined those are the facts that Tim just gave for the fire and the pool shed, and that's all they have.
Yeah.
There's no like other story. That's like, and it's still one of those things where they're like, did he self-barricade? Was he truly trapped? Like was there drugs involved? But what a cool guy. Yeah. And I remember him mostly for the revitalization that Zappos caused in the original downtown of Vegas. I mean,
right.
He brought in, he made it possible for all these craft restaurants to appear. There's a really cool bar down that has all these old video games. There's the Fremont Street experience. Because of his anchor there, moving the company there. He made a lot of stuff possible. What a young age, right? 46.
Yeah, and a brilliant guy. I mean, when you look at all the investments and things he made and things he was involved in, but he had that kind of side to him where they said they're not so sure if the fire wasn't started by nitrous oxide, whatever the deal was in that shed. But yeah, it's all odd circumstance. But Zappos.
Extreme talent, genius talent. Like we see movies about it all the time. Like musicians and singers who are truly gifted. And I don't know, maybe Tim, that's the burden of it. I don't know. I mean, the fact that he had a personality that would allow him to do a hunger strike or to fast until he was under 100 pounds.
Yeah.
I don't even know how tall he was, but like that's dangerous, right?
I have a friend who will do a fast, and he does extreme fasting. And he also does that very cold water plunging, where they'll plunge into ice baths and whatever.
Yep.
But I've asked him, and he posts videos about it, and he'll go through a 17-day fast or something where he has nothing but a couple sips of water even. That's about it. And then when he tries to break the fast, he'll just do it with juices and some things. But he says it puts him in a state of, he's like this euphoric state while he's fasting. Well, I don't know. I've never fasted that long. I fasted for, you fast before your colonoscopy. That's about all I do.
Last time I did that before a colonoscopy, and then I had the colonoscopy, and I guess they gave you propofol or something when they put you to sleep. And I had a meeting, Tim. I had a meeting after that. That was
that's right. I remember that.
And then after the meeting, I thought, I need new jeans. And since I had fasted and not eaten, I had was at least 2 or 3 pounds lighter than I normally am. I bought all these jeans, and about a week later, they're like, "Ooh, they feel kind of tight." Yeah, that's because you bought them when you were fasting, for God's sakes. Yeah. Bob's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know." It's such a me thing, right? Like, oh, I'm thin.
Yeah. So on our shop talk this week, one of my favorite shows that I watch all the time is Shark Tank, and Barbara Corcoran is on there. And I'd found this article. This is from, I believe it was Inc. Excuse me. Inc.
It was Inc. Yeah.
And the headline was, Barbara Corcoran says, if you want success, follow 4 simple rules. So initially she posted this on her LinkedIn page, which were 16 rules, which were in celebration of her 16 years on Shark Tank. But the author of this story, she decided to pull what she felt were the 4 that were most appropriate for everyday life. This is Minda Zetlin. Everyday life, or just navigating your way through work and for life, for success, I guess. So the first one, Mr. Nash, was that she titled here, or that she pointed out here, was to be yourself.
Yeah, she says, do you want me to do that, or do you want to?
You can do it.
Oh, so be yourself. And Tim and I ran through these really quickly beforehand, and we totally agree with a lot of this. Most of us strive to project the image we think people want to see, especially when we're trying to sell something. Barbara Corcoran says, that's a mistake. Show up as your true self. Investors can smell a phony from a mile away, and trust me, I wouldn't invest in someone who isn't genuine. Even when you're not pitching potential investors, there are a lot of good reasons to be your real self when dealing with customers, employees, and everyone else. Investors aren't the only people who will be put off by phonies. I couldn't agree more with this. You can tailor your behavior and your language and how you're interacting with someone on a minute level to make everything comfortable, but hopefully you're presenting as yourself, right?
Right. And I've interviewed people where I felt they were just full of, BS or something. And maybe that really was themselves, or maybe that's who they were. But whenever I could smell that, or I could sense something was just off, I people can read right through it, right? It's like someone who wears a toupee.
Exactly.
You know it right away.
They never look quite right.
No. Number 2 is tell a good story. Everyone loves a story, Corcoran says. If you don't have an epic story about your brand or about yourself, create one. A good story is essential, she adds, because people buy stories, not just products. That's also a way to learn stuff, too. I know people would talk about learning history and so forth by the story of it, not necessarily the dates, but having a good story around something. So what was the third thing?
Third one is don't undervalue yourself. If you think you're worth a dime, that's all you'll get. It's a common mistake for entrepreneurs, especially new ones, to place too low a value on their time or their products. It's like the Lucy thing. Well, if you're going to do it that way, you're going to make it up in volume.
Yeah.
She says here it's a problem because if you don't bring in enough money, either as payment for your product or service or as an investment, that will affect your ability to market that product properly. Now, of course, this is through the lens of pitching and entrepreneurs and stake money and all that stuff. But I think that not undervaluing yourself shows up in any position. If you're speaking to a manager or boss about a possible raise, or if you're in the employment interview pipeline and they're like, what's the salary? And you don't undervalue yourself, because we all know that if you put a number out there, the number could always be knocked down a little bit. But if you put a number that's too low out and somebody says, okay, we're going to hire you for that much, you just locked yourself in at a bad rate, right?
Right. And then, so the companion to that, number 4, was don't overvalue yourself, because as John mentioned, if you put a low number out and they grab it, same thing will happen if you put a high number out. They'll just ignore you and move on. You and I have struggled with this with our business, with our agency, Triberry, and many times we've done the math different ways, and we'll consult with a number of people we trust, or mentors, and
our board of directors,
people at other agencies, to say, here's the scope of the work we're doing. Here's what we're thinking of charging. And inevitably we get, you're not charging enough, or maybe you're charging a little too much, or maybe you're right in the middle. But it's difficult to try to put values on some of these things, right? I mean, the big one you and I were talking about, the project out west, it was all over the map, but we had guidance internally from them to help us come up with a number as well. But
sort of like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. This one is just right. Barbara, this article that Tim found in Inc. magazine, it's actually, they link to another piece that she put on LinkedIn, a list of 16 things that she considers to be the list. And I'll just quickly run through a few of them. Be authentic. We just talked about that. I like this. Have a rock solid pitch. You should know your pitch like the back of your hand. Over prepare until it's second nature. Tim and I would call this the elevator pitch. If you can talk to me about your concept or your show or whatever, and you got it nailed, I can get it.
Or why you should be hired, right? Why you should be hired, or why you should hire me. Yeah.
Presentation matters. Dress for the part. Have a story. We talked about that. Social media is essential. This one, I know it's essential, and I know people look at likes and clicks and stuff like that, but I could make an argument about social media that if I'm putting things on social media constantly, then I'm not doing something else, because let's not play like this is a zero-sum game. It takes time to do it, right?
Well, and it's like you're only putting the positive out there too.
Exactly.
So are you putting everything on social media? No. Because that's the one critique people give, is that sometimes people just look like their whole life is fabulous.
Yeah.
They're here, they're there, they're doing this, they're doing that. It's really, we've watched people on trips where they'll take these set up pictures and make it look like they're, in Bora Bora, and they just had a $2 coffee with you somewhere. So.
And the other stuff she has here, a lot of it comes down to if you're going to be on Shark Tank, like make eye contact. I like this one. Don't play the blame game. Things go wrong, that's business. Own it, take responsibility, learn, and move on. I think don't play the blame game and taking responsibility, I think we see that writ large in our politics of late, where if something doesn't go your way, well, you'll just invent a story to make it go your way, right?
Yeah.
And
one of the other ones I liked on here was don't be a know-it-all.
Mm-hmm. I like that one too. Yeah.
Yeah. I worked for somebody once that was a know-it-all, and it was difficult to get anything done. But
impossible, Tim.
Yeah.
Impossible,
were there other ones on here that I missed?
I think that listen to feedback is a big one.
Yeah.
And in fact, listen to feedback. She could have ended the whole list with this one, because this is the hardest part for people. Criticism and critique are so closely aligned emotionally that it's really hard to disentangle. And so I know that when Tim and I give feedback, when we've hired people for work, we really work hard to make sure we're doing it with critique, where you're literally critiquing the work. You're saying, I like what you did. It's the compliment sandwich. You did a great job. I love these 3 here. I don't like these. I don't think they're falling in line with what you did before. And then you finish with another compliment. But critique is so hard to absorb, but so important, right?
Right. And then the other ones, the other last two, 15, 16, know your competition. Everyone has competition. You need to know what you're up against. And then 16, have a clear vision, which goes to John's point earlier of having the story, being authentic, your elevator pitch, but having a clear vision as to where you're going or what you want to do.
Yeah.
It's also very difficult for people, I think.
Yes,
many times.
and in fact, I just read something the other day that really intrigued me. It was this article about how things happen, and the writer said, many of us have the ability to imagine the finished project, what it's going to look like, how people are going to be excited, but then you have to sit down and do it, and the doing it is hours and hours, and we all know this. So happy holidays. All right, that was a good shop talk, and as Tim said, he is a huge fan of Shark Tank, and I think it's a fun show to watch because I like gaming it out where the new product marches in with the team, and I'm wondering what's going to happen. Like, is it something I would buy? And how they spin it, and how they are thrown off balance by the questions from the Shark Tank panel, and that's one show I'll watch, and I'll also watch Bravo's. I used to watch Below Decks.
Oh, yes.
Because Below Decks to me was more real. It was young people learning how to manage themselves and manage being around people who were not always good. Like a lot of obnoxious guys. And I used to like Captain Lee playing the father figure. You did something wrong. Anyway, folks, thank you for joining us today here on the Focus Group. FocusGroupRadio.com is the site that you want to visit to learn about us, including our companion podcast, which is TFG Unbuttoned. We want to thank our partner here, Deep Discount. Last minute gift sale. I chose The Bishop's Wife. Tim chose the Frank Capra collection. It's 170 minutes of some of the Columbia's one of the best known directors in American cinema and in fact the world. And the release this week is The Terrifier. It's about a clown who did some bad stuff on Halloween. Now he's going to do some bad stuff on Christmas. Get the eggnog ready. It's The Terrifier coming to town. We want to remind people to please don't text and drive, arrive alive. Drive safe out there. A lot of crazy driving going on, as always. And we will see you here next week on The Focus Group.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.